an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Sex Education, Season 2, Episode 1. In this episode, an outbreak of chlamydia causes hysteria in the school. And also, now that he has learned how to masturbate, Otis can't seem to stop. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashleigh for commissioning this episode. Ashleigh is here in the chat. Hi, Ashleigh. Tanby says, love this episode. I thought this was a really good one. It started off the season in a way that really feels like we're revisiting all the bases that the previous season ended on in a satisfying way, where there's been like some time has passed, but it doesn't feel like such a jump ahead that we're left going, wait, what happened? And everybody feels sort of refreshed in a way that happens after a summer. You know, there's just a sense of it to me that like, we did have a summer break, and now we're returning for a new school year, and there's just a vibe to it. This episode deals in so many different people, and we don't actually see Adam at all. The only thing that we get about Adam is Eric asking his dad, and his father responding with, "Don't worry about my son. He won't be here to make your life difficult anymore." Because Eric asks when he's coming back. And his dad says he's not. And it's one of those moments that I feel like is very telling, where this man is admitting to Eric that he knew his son was making his life difficult and hadn't really like done anything about it. Because the only time that we've ever seen the headmaster actually discipline Adam or tell him what a like disappointment he is was really grade related stuff, or when Adam was acting out in a really publicly humiliating way for his father. But apparently he was like totally aware Adam was bullying Eric and just kind of kept that to himself, which really feels in character for him. He has like his personal pride and ego is definitely at the top of his list of concerns, and everything else is prioritized according to how much it affects that. Ashley says, not to skip right to the end, but do you remember during Bly Manor when you mentioned it was weird for you to hear a character named Owen? Was it made any easier with this one being called Chlamydia Owen, or being Chlamydia Owen? No, when they say Owen to him, I stopped and was like, oh no. But yeah, it's always weird to hear his name, because it's not it is a common name. Everybody has heard it, but I haven't met anyone else, I don't think, in my life named Owen. He's the only Owen I've ever personally known. So it's just one of those names that it's like, it's common enough probably in fiction and stuff that we're all sort of familiar with it, but it doesn't actually turn up often. Tan says, I think it was a Christmas break. Oh, was it? It feels like a whole new school year. Well, nevertheless, there's no real sense of like seasonality to this show, and I think that's on purpose. You know, they don't have everything feels sort of timeless in a way that I believe is deliberate. So that might be part of why I'm not even sure. So I want to deal like off the top with the one thing that I found a bit upsetting about this episode. And I'm beginning to realize that this is something that is going to be a weak point for the show that I sort of am going to have to learn to accept. It's a bit frustrating to feel this way. And by this way, I mean that I'm going to have to accept it, because the show is very like on the mark a lot of the time and seems extremely conscious of what it's coping with. But then it will really, in my opinion, drop the ball on the way it handles certain things. And I will be surprised by it because it seems in so many other respects they try to be so careful. So the thing that really bugged me this episode is that there is this girl who is being blamed for spreading chlamydia throughout the school. And she is being bullied on stage by her alleged friends. They are walking around telling the whole school this. We hear separate people repeating the thing that her friends have said. They actually get into a physical, like a fist fight at one point. And then at the end, we're all just friends again. That's it. We found out that it was actually Owen who was spreading it. And we don't even see them find that out. And we don't actually see any attempt to, like, resuscitate her reputation that has taken the kind of hit that just, it won't recover from. It just won't. And I don't see absolutely any attempt to cope with that. You know, we see her, like, leave the classroom at one point looking at these girls saying, "You're supposed to be my friends." And I really thought that was a sign that we were going to deal with it. And they just don't. We literally see them with their arms around each other, smiling at one another at the end of this episode as if none of this ever happened. And I'm sorry, but no. If I were this girl's mother, I wouldn't want her to be friends with those girls anymore. The fact that they were able to turn on her and do so viciously and without any sort of rational reasoning behind it. There is, like, every single reason to not think about her, what they apparently do. And yet they still are, like, scapegoating her. It's bizarre and really gross. And I was just super bummed that there's not really any attempt to make that right at the end. And when I say that I'm realizing I'm just going to have to, like, get used to this with this show, this is also how I felt with the whole thing with Eric. You know, there's no indication to me that Eric has even told Otis what happened to him, which I think is incredibly fucked up and makes me look back on that episode with a little bit of, like, I was giving them the benefit of the doubt that they were trying to deal with a topic that's very serious, which is hate crimes and dealing with being queer in the world and the dangers of that. But then they don't even follow it through with a conversation with his best friend. So to me, it feels like that's totally unearned. If you're going to show something that's very traumatic and upsetting, you're going to need to commit to actually following through on the consequences of it and the way that it affects friendships, and Otis having to reevaluate his own privilege of being able to, like, walk around and leave his friend like this and not even think about the danger that it puts him in. There are a lot of layers to the reality of an episode like that and the responsibility that you're taking on by telling that story. And I just really thought they would be better than this. So this girl, and then, you know, on a smaller scale, but still I think probably more significant than we would all like to admit, the whole thing that happens with Ruby's vagina picture being shared everywhere, and the fact that everybody's shaming her when in fact she looks perfectly normal and there's nothing wrong, and it's never made clear that she looks perfectly normal and there's nothing wrong, so that anybody who does pause and look at that and then looks at their own vagina will be, like, completely paranoid that something about them is, like, freakish and weird and revolting. And I really wish that it feels like the show focuses a lot more on, like, the zaniness of the conflict, and they don't want to put the effort into the resolution. And I don't think that's responsible. When you're dealing with, like, it's just, they have taken so much of the show so seriously in the way they want to tell the story. And I find it puzzling that that sort of thing isn't taken as seriously. And I don't think it's a coincidence that all of those things are things to do with femmes, and I'm including Eric in that, because Otis being, like, the main character, straight white guy, it's like he's given all kinds of room. You know, we're seeing more of what's going on with Otis than we probably even want to. And I really think there's something to be said for perhaps trimming back a little bit of that so that things have room to breathe on other storylines, because those storylines deserve that time. So anyway, I wanted to address that because I have been frustrated by it. And I think that this show is probably, they're doing their best to balance serious topics and genuinely attempting to, I think, make an effort at educating people, while also infusing it with humor and some screwball comedy aspects. And that's not an easy line to walk. So I understand the difficulty there. But I really feel like that isn't too much to ask. And it's been a recurring theme. And I'm just concerned about what else I'm going to see. What other storylines I'm going to feel this way about coming up, Anyway, so I just wanted to get that out of the way, because that's really the toughest one. Otherwise, I felt pretty satisfied by the way a lot of things are handled here. So let's just talk about Otis off the top. Maeve is not in school right now. She, it appears, has dropped out at first, and she winds up sort of doing a take-backsies on that. But for now, Otis is just doing regular, going to school, coming home, seeing his girlfriend-ish. I'm going to call her his girlfriend. He's as much a normal teenager as he has ever been. And yet, probably the most normal thing is the fact that he cannot stop jerking off. Now that he has figured out how to do it, it's just he's getting boners all the time, and he has no choice but to pull over his bike in the woods and jerk off. And I really wanted to be dude, you really need to find some sort of meditation therapy for thinking about things that are revolting to you in order to get your dick to calm down, because you can't always find a bathroom and run off to deal with it. You're just not always going to be in that position. And this all culminates, there's a montage at the start of the episode of how many times a day he's jerking off and how easy it is for him to get a boner and then have to jerk off. And it finally ends with this awful moment where he's in the car waiting for his mother to come back out with some groceries. And he sees this woman who's just holding a dog, and she's not a particularly attractive woman. She's not wearing anything revealing. There's nothing about her that one would be wow, check out that woman, but it's the whole point of what's going on with him is that it doesn't take anything that you would expect to get him aroused. It's just simple as the vibration of riding his bike at one point, which Eric knows exactly what it is because he has it too. So he's got a boner in the car, and he just decides, I just have to take care of this right now. And I was like, you really don't. But he's kind of got a compulsion right now. It's not just about, I need to get rid of this boner. He wants to jerk off. So he starts to. And I could, of course, see coming. His mother forgets her wallet, and she comes to the car, peers in, intending, obviously, to ask him to roll down the window and grab her wallet and hand it to her. But instead catches him right before he comes, and there's just this spray of cum on the window right in front of her face. Pretty much the most humiliating thing. It's truly awful. Oh my God. Ashleigh says, not the only thing you saw coming. I'm so sorry. Ashleigh, get out. Get out. Leave. You're not, I can't allow this sort of thing. So this, of course, inevitably leads to a talk with his mother where she's just well, look, I understand that we've reached a new point in your, what does she say? Your pubescent journey, something fucking awful. And I'm very happy and proud, but also there's a time and place. And he clearly doesn't want to talk about it, which of course you wouldn't. She has no reason to expect his trust. But at one point she does bring up the fact that, like, look, you're taking longer showers too. And like, I live here. I need hot water. If you could just keep that in mind. And finally he gets sort of saved by the bell, and because their doorbell rings, and he gets up and leaves. And she's shouting after him, isn't it wonderful how we were able to just talk and share? And I was like, girl, you are trying to make this thing be a thing that it ain't. Like, stop it. Man. The thing is, because one might see this as forward progress for him, and it certainly is, but it seems like it's going to be forward progress in terms of his, like, sexual relationships. And instead, what happens is that when he is alone with Ola, they are fooling around and he can't get hard. And this results in a scene that it's like a domino effect. I'm going to try. I can't even, like, remember exactly how it goes. So I'm going to find the spot so that I can, like, he is fooling around with Ola. She wants to know why he's not getting hard, asks if it's me. He gets up and runs out of the room in total humiliation, kind of falls down the stairs, and startles his mother, who is on the couch about to have sex with Jakob. And he stands up off his mother. His pants are down, so he just basically flashes them and then stumbles backward in embarrassment onto the coffee table, which breaks under him. So he winds up collapsed on top of that. Honestly, this was such a good scene. I was fucking dying laughing, you guys. I really was. Like, it was just so, all of it was so well done. All of this physical comedy and the fact that Jakob is a full-grown man, but is also experiencing this, like, acute humiliation, that felt fair, you know? Like, I was glad that it wasn't just Otis who was here with his pants down. However, this does bring to a head, so to speak, the fact that Jean is sleeping with Jakob and didn't tell him and was lying about it. And Otis, rightfully, I think, is like, dude, I can't believe that yet again I get to feel like a freak. I really thought I was finally reaching the stage of normal teenager. And now I'm over here with my girlfriend knowing that my mom is trying to fuck her dad. And this is just so uncomfortable. And I've really had a lot of sympathy for him. Like, I'm not mad at his mom. Jakob is hot as fuck. I want her to be able to pursue something that seems real for the first time in years and actually get over the damage that her ex-husband did. But it is just such unfortunate circumstances, you know? Meanwhile, Eric, throughout this episode, Eric is just so delighted with the development of Otis's addiction to wanking. And he is effervescent is really the only word that I can think of. Every scene he's in, he is practically like, it's like there's no gravity. He is so elated and cracking up and on the edge of screaming to everybody exactly what is going on. Has this, like, manic grin on his face. At one point, there's a confrontation with Jackson, and Otis looks down and has a boner, and Eric is fucking dying, and is, like, yelling after Otis. Was it talking about chlamydia, or was it Jackson that gave you the boner? Not making the slightest attempt to, like, help his friend keep it on the DL or anything. Honestly, part of me was like, Eric, come on, help a brother out. Just shh. On the other hand, though, he's so fun to watch that I was just like, it's fine. You know, like, I couldn't even be that mad. And he really reminds me of an uncle on my father's side named Jorge, who always is this kind of like joyous, effervescent, like just bubbly to the point that he seems to be lifting everyone around him like champagne, you know, where if you guys have ever seen, there's a thing where you, like among certain cultures, where you'll drop a raisin into your glass of champagne or a sugar cube, and it'll sort of like float because of the carbonation a little bit. Like it'll hit the bottom, but it won't quite hit the bottom. And the bubbles just keep on kind of, and that's how I feel like it would be to be around Eric. Is like, you're barely keeping your feet on the ground. He's lifting you every few minutes with just this like, and there's no escaping it and there's no controlling it. And I love that, you know, that's the kind of thing that I would like to believe that I bring to gatherings that I am in also. But I think that I'm a little bit too grounded in the seriousness of the thing and making comedy out of that to really have that effect. I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed Eric this episode. And he makes an attempt to like do the thing that Maeve did. I was surprised that there isn't more excitement about it, because he seemed so upset at being left out last season that when he finally convinces Otis to take on clients again, and Otis gives him the job of tracking the appointments, I kind of thought Eric would be a little bit more like, haha, I'm glad Maeve's gone. Now I get to do this thing and it'll help my status too. But instead, he just very quickly is like, yeah, I don't remember any of the appointments, so sorry about that. And just sort of lets it go, but continues to be very supportive of Otis doing it, even if he's not going to be involved in it. And, you know, I kind of like that, though, because it also does resolve the fact that he felt left out, so that this season, when the two of them continue their adventure, Eric will know that it's not even something that he wants to be involved in. He didn't enjoy that aspect of it, and he can have something of his own. So everybody, when Otis shows up to this first day back, whether it's like beginning of a new term or what, there is this scare going on. And I should mention too that this is Ola's first day, so this is her first taste of the school, and it's just a really bad fucking like impression. Everybody is freaking out because there is this sort of like school-wide hysteria about how all of them may have chlamydia. And as the episode continues, it becomes really clear, like, that almost nobody has chlamydia. There's a lot of people who think they might, and this is really something that can happen where, you know, this is what's happening with COVID, is people are having, like, general colds, or they're having allergies, and all of us are like, oh my God, I have COVID. I think I might have COVID. And it's like, of course you think that. Of course you do. I'm not even mad at you. We are all trying to make sure that we're taking precautions. We all want to be sure we're okay. But there's even people who have never had sex trying to get Otis in the hallway to be like, do you think I should rub bleach on my vagina? And he's like, what? And he keeps trying to say, I'm not giving advice anymore, but no, you should not do that. But I'm not giving advice anymore. But he can't help himself, because like, this is people's health that's at stake. They could really hurt themselves, you know? So what it comes back to, and you guys are going to have to help me. I can't remember the name of the girl who these other two accuse of being like patient zero. But this girl is being accused of having spread the chlamydia between a bunch of people in the a cappella group. And first of all, we need to talk about how insanely pretty she is. It is... like, I just kept staring at her. Every scene that she is in, I was like, just blown away. She's so beautiful. I just kept being like, my God. I wouldn't have been surprised if it turned out that these other two girls are just like really jealous of you and doing something mean because they're trying to take you down. Ashleigh says, patient zero girls, Fiona. Thank you, Ashleigh. But yeah, Fiona never even had chlamydia. So this rumor that's being circulated about how she's the one who spread it because she has fucked everybody, it's like, she maybe has fucked a few people. It's not even like that's the thing that we're arguing about, but she didn't have chlamydia. So that's not what's happening here, but nobody seems interested in that development. They, like, her friends don't, it's not even like they're acting like they don't believe her. They're just acting like the fact that she doesn't have it isn't a factor at all. And, that's the whole thing. What are you talking about? So she goes to Otis trying to find out a way to, like, get this rumor to fucking be dropped. And again, Otis just doesn't want to be giving advice, like, officially, because I think he wants to feel more normal. But he's seeing that this girl is being, like, bullied and that everybody is talking shit about her. And he just can't sit by and let that continue. So eventually, what he does is he gets a list of, like, people that she slept with and people that these other two girls have slept with in an effort to try and trace back who tested positive, where it came from. And the thing about this is that you have to, like, trust that people are telling you the actual truth about it. Which I really don't think I would ever believe anybody. I have myself, and I have also seen people blatantly lie about sexual history or issues that they have had when they are not interested in engaging with somebody. And there's no reason for anybody to actually tell Otis the truth. But because we have to have this, like, problem get solved, we're going to take it for granted that people are actually telling the truth. And eventually, things get traced back to Jackson. And Jackson, it turns out, got tested negative, and he shows both Eric and Otis the test. Otis and Eric together in these scenes. There's a moment, there's this one, and then it's later when he's talking to Owen in the hallway with Eric, and Eric just keeps repeating what Otis says, but, like, with an attitude, and it is so funny. It takes a real delivery to get the repeating of a line to work that well and still be that funny, and he really nails it. So this scene with Jackson too, it's made very clear that he deeply resents Otis. And he says something like, "Tell Maeve I said hi." And Otis tries to say, "I haven't seen her," but clearly Jackson either doesn't believe him or that's really very secondary. And eventually we see what Maeve is up to. She is working at this pretzel stand, and it's in the mall, and she's sort of, like, looking over at one point, and she sees her mother, who is pushing a stroller. And she has a really, like, intense reaction to seeing her. Immediately rips off her apron and starts to, like, try and sprint through the mall in order to, it was hard for me to tell. I think that she was trying to track her down, even though it looked like at first her mother was coming toward her. Yeah, because eventually she sees her in, like, home goods store and pounds on the window and says, "I can see you." Oh my God. This is really tough. This is one of those things that, this is why addiction is so tricky. Because when you are dealing with trying to change your life and be better, you want people to believe in you, and you need them to. If people don't, it's a lot harder to make yourself do better, because you believe that those around you see the truth about you, and therefore if they have decided that you aren't going to be able to pull this off, then maybe they can see the truth and you can't. So on the one hand, I deeply understand the need for a person to be supportive when you're telling them, I'm trying to turn my life around and be better. On the other hand, it's obvious that this is old hat. Everything that she is telling, and I don't remember, I think Gwen is Maeve's mom's name. Everything that she tells Maeve, it's obvious that Maeve has not only heard before, but watched play out more than once. Aaron, thank you, Ashleigh. I don't know where I got Gwen. And this is what's so, because one, you don't owe anybody forgiveness. They can ask for it, but they don't have a right to expect it of you. And two, when you have deeply wronged somebody, just apologizing doesn't actually make it right. That is the first step towards taking responsibility, but it isn't actually making it right. And this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with understanding. The only true apology is changed behavior. Thus, verbally stating that you fucked up and you're going to try to do better is not really the full apology. That's the first half of it. You changing behavior and it being evident to the person you harmed that you are making that effort is the rest of the apology. So Maeve is in a position where I do not believe that she owes her mother the benefit of the doubt here at all. At the same time, I know that getting clean often takes like 4 or 5 tries, unfortunately. And this is why I just really believe that we should legalize all drugs. Because having them be criminalized is just, it's the same issue as with dealing with prostitution. If we make sex work legal, that means that workers are protected and they are not afraid of trying to, find recourse in the law for mistreatment because they are going to be arrested. I truly believe that sort of thing requires regulation. And, there have been numerous studies, and there's been like a case study in Portugal with the legalization of every single drug. And instead of treating drug use as a crime and treating it as a health crisis, which it is, that actually helps people. Because an addict can know that they will go to jail if they get caught with this. That is so far outweighed by their immediate physical need that it doesn't matter. So, it's just one of those things that I really, addiction storylines are particularly fraught. And I have close family, including my father, who went through addiction and trying to get off of a drug. And what it really takes usually is finding something to replace the drug, because it is usually a result of some sort of compulsion and a need to feel control in some way. So my father eventually got off coke, and he replaced it with sugar, and he replaced it with religion. And those were the two things that he clung to as a sort of fill for the place that drugs had originally been. Now, what's going on with Aaron is real weird. Aaron has a new boyfriend who used to be her sponsor. And Maeve says something that implies she has slept with her sponsor before. This is so common. It's really, any time that someone is put in a position of having to be consistently emotionally vulnerable with a person, and they are attracted in any way, that will eventually be an issue that you have to deal with. And I mean, this is what happened with Otis's dad and his client. You know, that's a very common thing, for clients to like have crushes or think they are in love with their therapist. The sponsor thing I have seen a million times. I have luckily escaped it, but I have seen it. And, you know, this happens just with like students and teachers, anybody who is in a position of authority where you can feel a sense of admiration and really a safety with that person. It just tends to happen. But I could forgive it. The thing that really kills me is when that person, like, exactly. Ashleigh says it seems like an abuse of power for her sponsor to take advantage of that vulnerability. This is the thing. Like, Otis's father was really wrong for fucking that client. Like, she's a patient. And I believe that if that were to get out, he could probably be ruined. And a sponsor, you know, when you really need to know how to put boundaries up and not fall into that. And it turns out Aaron, because like Maeve is not here to play. Aaron keeps trying to say things are really different now. I'm turning my life around. I've been clean for a year. And then it comes out that her boyfriend James does not even know that Maeve and her brother exist. Which that really is incredibly gross. And I appreciate it because she says something like, I didn't want to come back until I was totally stable. And Maeve's response is, I'm glad you could fit us into your schedule. And I loved that because, look, I understand that not being around your kids when you're at your worst feels like the priority. But it's not doing what you think it's doing. You think that you're protecting them from you, but you're protecting yourself, really, is what's happening. You are doing something to distance yourself from the feelings of guilt that you rightly have because you are failing your children, and you should feel that way, and you should be forced to face that. So, first of all, abandoning them is super duper not the way to go. What the fuck? Like, sincerely, what the fuck? And again, I have seen this. I have seen parents just disappear on their kids because they had an addiction. And it's just truly astonishing to me that anybody can be a parent and feel like it's optional, that they can just like bail. Just because your kid is old enough to use the phone, unlock a door, and feed themselves does not mean that you get to fucking bail. So Maeve's rage at this is 100% earned. And I don't know what she thinks is going to happen with her boyfriend when he finds out that she has 2 kids. Not that they're going to be like necessarily around, because it doesn't look like her mother's going to be around. But I don't think that's going to go anywhere good. You know, keeping that kind of huge secret is, first of all, not a great premise to start a relationship on. But also, she's allegedly here because she's working through the steps, and you can't be lying to your sponsor / significant other and have any sort of like healthy, honest dialogue. Like, that doesn't work. And she says now she has a different sponsor that she isn't sleeping with. That basically, I had one, I slept with him, he's now my boyfriend, and I got another one. And then later on, Maeve gets an envelope that says on it, until I tell him, and it's filled with money. And I will tell you what, I do not like this at all. To me, this is like a giant waving red flag. Where is that money coming from? Is that just because she got a job and she's able to, like, this feels like she's into some shady shit. And that can be all kinds of things. But God knows that, you know, it wouldn't be unheard of to go to a step meeting in order to prey on people, because that has certainly been a tactic. And it's just, I really worry about that. And you can see the worry on Maeve's face also. And there are some people, when she gets this envelope, moving in into one of the trailers, like across from her, sort of diagonal to her. Two young men who I can't tell if they're partners or if they're brothers. One of them's in a wheelchair, and she immediately asks if he needs help, and he's like, I didn't ask for it, so no. And is very, aggressive, but I really wasn't mad at him at all, because I'm certain that when you're in a wheelchair, you get so many like offers of help that are actually not meant to be, they're supposed to be, oh, I'm so selfless, but really it's somebody like just jerking off and feeling really good about themselves. This is something that I feel a lot more understanding about ever since gaining weight. And this is going to seem like a weird comparison, but hear me out. I've talked before about how being fat and out in the world means that a lot of my behaviors feel like they're under a microscope in a way that they weren't before. So if I take a walk, I will have random strangers tell me they're proud of me and ask me how much weight I've lost. If I'm eating a salad, I will have a random stranger be like, oh, good for you. When it's just, I just wanted a salad. What? This isn't a state. I'm not, what? And I don't even have it too badly. I'm not on the receiving end of it that often compared to other friends of mine who have people like lean out windows and scream insults at them when they're just walking down the fucking sidewalk. And I posted about this person asking, like, saying, first, I'm proud of you. Second of all, how much weight have you lost, on Facebook? And a listener, Anne, I think it was, she's in a wheelchair, and she commented with just like, oh my God, the kinds of unsolicited comments you get when you're in a wheelchair. It is, first of all, people who feel really sorry for you. Oh, this is awful. Are you okay? Oh, that kind of thing. You get people who make weird, like, judgment calls about whether you really need a wheelchair, even though they have no idea who you are, or, you get people giving you advice out of nowhere. And that's like, being a woman, you're going to get people giving you advice out of nowhere anyway. I can't imagine how much worse it must be. The variety of things that people feel free to sort of use you for. She said that she just wants to be able to live without being anybody's like inspiration, because that's the role that people like put her in to serve them. And she's like, I'm a person who's living my life. I'm not trying to be a symbol. And I didn't agree to this. And I was like, that sounds exhausting. So the way that he sort of snaps at Maeve when she asks if he needs help, her asking if he needed help did not have any of the sound to it that I would associate in the tone of somebody who is being kind of like a dick about it. But I completely understand him having that reaction and just being like, mind your fucking business, because really, that just sounds so tiring. Ashleigh says, being a fat woman is never being allowed to just be neutral. I was listening to another podcaster who mentioned that as a fat activist, she gets a lot of people opening up about their trauma in a way other activist friends were receiving, and kind of came to the conclusion that it was because she was being seen as a homely mother figure type. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense, actually. Yeah, it's wild. People just decide that you are a character in their movie, and they cast you in a role that you didn't agree to or don't necessarily have interest in. And then they'll be angry at you when you don't play according to type. And it's like, well, that's because I'm not that. So, So I'm interested to see what happens with these two new people who have moved into the park with her, because they're old enough. They're not in school anymore. I don't think. They don't look like they're, they look like they're college age. I'm curious if they are a gay couple or if it's like brothers situation, because that also changes the dynamic of things. And I'm excited to see some representation of somebody in a wheelchair. Because, that's just not often represented, unfortunately, without it being like the main event and it being this tragic tale a lot of the time. So we'll see how that goes. And what else happens with Maeve other than her mother? Again, guys, I just want to recap with, I am loving the conflict between her and her mother, but it's such a complicated conversation. Anybody who hasn't dealt with addicts, and by that I mean somebody who is very close to them, whom they love, because people will have like an outside experience of another person going through that with someone they love, and they will be very judgmental over the fact that this person keeps giving their brother or their daughter second chances when they don't deserve it. And it's just, if you haven't gone through it, you don't understand what it is like to see somebody whom you know and you have known for years turn into someone else due to a thing they're putting in their body. And so you keep giving them chances because you know that it's not them, it's this thing. And if they could get off it, who they were is still in there somewhere. And that's not to say they'll just go back to how they were, because you can't simply erase the trauma as if it never happened. But I think a lot of people fail to grasp what it is like. They will see that person's daughter or brother as, quote, an addict. But that's not how that person sees them. That is their brother David. They grew up together. They loved each other. They even roomed together for a long time. And then something happened and he got in with some bad people. And so it's really easy to just take a hardline stance with like, well, you just can't support them anymore. Once this sort of thing starts to happen, you can't keep giving them chances. It's just not that simple. And some people do get clean. Some people are able to pull it together, and it takes more than one time, and then sometimes people aren't, and you never know. You just have to like figure out where you draw the line for yourself, because you do need to have boundaries. It's not like you should just sacrifice yourself on the altar of helping this person get better. But people are very quick to suggest that you do that because they don't understand what it is that is happening. So what's going on with Maeve? I'm like, on the one hand, I would love to see her mother actually be clean. On the other hand, if they chose to have her mom fall off the wagon and begin using again, that wouldn't be unrealistic. And then there's like a third hand, her mother can get clean and still be not a good mother, not a supportive person, selfish and just thoughtless. And that is, there's the thing with Maeve is that when I'm describing these other people who have loved ones, I'm describing somebody who later in life grew to have addiction problems. But with Maeve, this is a person that she hasn't seen not have addiction problems. So this is, from where she's standing, who her mother is. And I don't, there's like, that's a situation where I don't know how I would feel. Because while my parents had drug problems, it was never to the point that I felt abandoned due to them. It always felt like they were aware it was a problem and they were trying their best. And it doesn't feel like they were trying their best on my behalf. It felt like I was a factor. Maeve doesn't feel like she's a factor. And that's what I think is the most hurtful, is that her mother seems incredibly like self-centered and self-absorbed about her recovery and doesn't seem to want to admit that there is an effect that can't be just sort of like placated away by, oh yeah, I went to a step meeting and I'm here to make amends. You know, you can't just do that over and over again. So anyway, it's just a complicated thing, and I'm very curious to see how that plays out. So Maeve, after this visit with her mother, it really sort of like galvanizes her to change things up, because she's beginning to realize that she is going down the same road as her mother in a lot of ways. Her mom says something about how she used to dye her hair the same way that Maeve's is. Apparently she was also a dropout. And so Maeve, after this convo, goes home. She quits her job at the pretzel stand. She goes home and dyes her hair brown, back to its sort of natural color, and gets her shit together and goes to the school and basically demands readmittance from the headmaster. He is such a complete cunt to her. It is remarkable, actually. The gall that he has with his attitude toward her, considering how poorly everything has been going for him. Because we have the sort of superintendent, I can't remember her title, who is played by the same woman who played Hannah in The Haunting of Bly Manor. I was super excited to see her. When she walked in, I was just like, ah. And it's really funny. It's fun to see her in this role, because in Bly Manor, she's the very like nurturing, sort of like soft-spoken character. And here she's like, you know, much more intimidating, business first, sort of like pragmatic. And it was very exciting to see her get to like try out a different type of role. I hope that she gets a lot more work, because she is delightful and she's so beautiful. I just kept being startled, like her fucking cheekbones, man. Like she turns her head. I was just like, Christ. And so the headmaster is under all of this scrutiny, and yet he seems like completely at ease with telling Maeve not only can she not come back, but that he's going to like have her escorted off campus by police. And I was really like, dude, this isn't the play. What are you doing? Because what she's telling him is essentially all of the essays that got like awards for this school were essays I wrote. And I will tell that I wrote them and that this is a school full of cheaters unless you let me back in. And when he refuses this, she does something to distract the secretary, takes over the loudspeaker, and begins to read sections of the essays and say that she wrote them, and starts to... Now, the reason that this doesn't quite sink in with the superintendent who's visiting is because as she's doing this, the fight breaks out outside. So it's not entirely clear why she's reading this or what's happening. And he and the superintendent come back into the room while she's on a loudspeaker and interrupt. And she doesn't actually out him and say like why she's doing this or what's going on. She just like makes it clear that she has a stack of these essays and gives him this look. And what they tell the superintendent is like, oh yeah, we have a reading of the winning essay over the loudspeaker during classroom hours, which she's like, that's an incredibly bad idea. Don't do that. And eventually both she and the superintendent leave, and the headmaster's remaining with the teacher, the English teacher, whose name I can't remember, but she tells the headmaster, I think the superintendent would be really interested in knowing that your son cheated to win the award that he did. And if you, like, she's like, she doesn't even say, I'll tell unless you let Maeve back. She says, I think something like, Maeve's coming back to school, end of discussion. And that's it. And I was just like cheering and so happy. I really liked seeing the headmaster sweat this episode. I thought that this was a really, and what we are going on with throughout this season, I'm expecting, is that these first few days in which she's visiting are riddled with massive problems. So he's sort of on a probationary period here, where if he doesn't pull his shit together, he may be removed as headmaster entirely. And personally, you love to see it. You know, unfortunately, in the real world, our priorities are often so fucked up. I love at one point she says, "What's next? Creationism?" And I was like, girl, in Texas? Yes, exactly. And there's also this amazing meeting where it reminded me of something in, this is what Ashleigh was bringing up too. It reminds me of something from Parks and Rec, if you guys have watched that show. Parks and Rec has frequent depictions of town council meetings, and it's so great because they're always just like, they're emphasizing how frothed people get when they're in a group and they all like feed off of their fear. And also what poor educations adults have regarding sex as well. And this is something that I think the show points out continuously pretty well, which is that, yeah, we've got a lot of teenagers who don't know what the fuck is going on, but they're teenagers and they're figuring it out. These adults should really know better, and they don't seem to. And everybody is like, they're alleging that chlamydia is killing their kids. There's masks being handed out, which I don't know if this was like filmed during the pandemic or like right around it, but that felt very topical to me. And all of this, like, you know, these sort of urban myths about how you can contract it are circulating. The other two girls try and claim that they got it from like a whistle that they all shared. This is the sort of thing that people would say you got it from a toilet seat. You got it from like a tractor is an episode of Seinfeld where his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend told her that she contracted chlamydia from riding a tractor in her bathing suit. But there's just a lot of misinformation out there, and adults are as guilty of it as kids are, unfortunately. It's really pathetic. Like, there are a lot of men who have been having sex for some time who still think that women pee out of their vagina. They don't even realize that there's like two separate holes. And I just can't understand how these men can be as obsessed with pussy as they are and yet not know anything about it. It's truly amazing. But anyway, so they're in the midst of this like, I wanted to say parent-teacher conference, but it's not even really that, because it's like a conference to me, always, I think of it as like the one-on-one with the teacher. And this is an auditorium full of people, but I guess, yeah, you could still call it that. And eventually Jean stands up and wants to know, like, what are we doing about this? And as she's speaking about the stigma surrounding the STI and the misinformation, we see the superintendent watching her with an expression of great approval on her face. And all of the parents like pipe down and listen to her when she's talking. It's really clear that she's able to command attention. She has this air of like knowledgeability that people trust and listen to right away. And eventually she gets a call where they're wanting her to be in charge of the re-education. And I am just like, look, you're not wrong because she's good at her job, but also I am so sorry, Otis. You don't need this too. Like, on top of everything, you know? Ashleigh says this season came out in January last year, so it would have been recorded probably before even the reports were coming out of China. Okay. God. Remember that, guys? Back when we didn't really think it was going to be much of an issue here, but we were hearing about it vaguely. Wild. So I like, she doesn't actually accept, But she smiles when it's suggested on the phone, and I'm assuming she's going to accept because she doesn't have good boundaries. I'm hoping she will at least ask Otis how he feels about it, but even if she asks him, I expect her to do exactly what she wants, whether or not he says he wants her to or not. I'm out of time, so I really have to talk about Jackson really quickly. But he is not coping well at all with the breakup with Maeve. And it's affecting his performance with swimming. But also, he clearly isn't really thinking he wants this anymore. And he doesn't know how to tell his moms that. And he hears them fighting at one point, and they're talking about how they shouldn't, like, well, the blonde one is saying how we shouldn't even have let him date her. And he tries to sort of, what he's doing here is attempting to take it upon himself to fix the problem between them by performing better at this sport. And it's so heartbreaking to watch because, like, dude, this is not on you. It's not your responsibility. And the fact that it's not like he doesn't seem to, his heart's not in it anymore. So eventually he's in the weight room and he's training with some guys, and they're using one of those cable like setups. And there are stacks of weights that crash back down on top of a stack, and he's watching them, and without warning shoves his hand between them so that he breaks a couple bones. And it results in him not being allowed to swim for several weeks. And, that's basically gonna just shoot his scholarship right in the foot. Like that. And we saw what happened and that it was on purpose, but he is trying to make it sound like it was just an accident. And I have to confess, I am still pretty engaged in this story. I sort of wondered once he had been split from Maeve and his story was like standing on its own. I was not sure if I would still be invested, and I am. So I feel bad because it's like, there's a sense of him not even really understanding why he did it. Do you know what I mean? Like, he certainly is doing it so that he doesn't have to swim anymore. But there's also like, maybe if me practicing isn't the thing that they like, maybe if that as an element of their argument is just taken away, they won't have anything left to fight about anymore. And, sweetie, they'll find something. So, yeah, that's the end of this episode. So, yeah, I really liked this. I thought this was a good opener. I didn't even really talk about the main plot, but eventually it turns out that dude is the one who spread it. And the two girls who were sleeping with him both want to, like, keep it quiet that they're even sleeping with him because they're, like, ashamed of him. And like I said, we don't actually see that girl's name getting cleared or anything, which frustrated me, but what can you do? But nevertheless, I am really interested to see how things go. I'm glad that Maeve is back. I am glad that there's like a threat hanging over the headmaster's head. We need leverage over this guy somehow. It's great. And yeah, this is a good return. So, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you again, Ashleigh, for commissioning this. And thank you to all of you for being in the chat. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.